I never thought I'd see her again. The nurse who once sat by my hospital bed and told me I'd be fine. Years passed, life moved on until one ordinary afternoon, I heard her voice behind me in a crowded mall. The way she looked at me and what she said next changed everything I thought I knew about timing, fate, and second chances. Hello, you're watching Trulene, Mamain. Real stories with real twists. Let's get started. I'm Edwin, 33, and I live in a modest one-bedroom in a quiet corner of Glendale, just outside Los Angeles. I do operations for a regional logistics company. Basically, I keep routes from falling apart and phones from exploding when a truck breaks down at 3:00 a.m. I run. I cook the same 3 dinners on rotation, and I'm the guy who always returns shopping carts to the corral because leaving them loose makes me anxious. That's me, for better or worse. 3 years ago, I had a bad week that turned into a worse night. A driver blew a red light and crumpled the front end of my car. I made it out with a fractured wrist and a chest full of bruises, but I stayed in the hospital longer than I expected. The part one still remember most isn't the pain or the beeping monitors. It's a nurse named Chris, short for Christina, who moved like she already knew what I needed before I did. She was steady and dry funny and kept nagging me to eat the Jell-O I swore tasted like perfume. When I got discharged, I thanked her and promised to mail a card. I never did. Life grabbed me by the throat again. We didn't see each other after that. Sometimes when I drove past the hospital on the 134, I thought about sending that card and decided it was too late for a thank you that had missed its moment. On a Saturday in early spring, I drove to the mall to replace earbuds I'd washed in the pocket of my hoodie. The place was busy in that weekend way. Kids with pretzels, couples negotiating over light fixtures, a piano version of some pop song sliding out of the ceiling. I figured I'd grab coffee first. The line at the cafe snaked past the stanchions. I scrolled through emails, pretending to be busy so I wouldn't think about how long it was. I noticed the woman in front of me because she had the calm posture of someone who never fights the line. She just endures it. Light denim jacket, hair pulled back, the kind of face that looks both alert and kind. There was that feeling you get when you think you know a stranger from somewhere else. An itch in the memory that won't say its name. She half turned to check the menu, and our eyes flicked across each other's faces. Her expression changed first. Recognition, then surprise, then warmth. She tilted her head as if my name might be taped behind my ear. Edwin, she said. Hearing my name from a stranger should have startled me. Instead, it slotted into place like a puzzle piece. Chris, the word came out on a laugh I didn't plan. Her smile opened, and in an instant, I was back in that room with the bad TV and the good nurse who tied my gown better than I did. You were my favorite patient to worry about, she said like a secret she was finally allowed to tell. It was the kind of line you only say if it's true. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, just honest enough to tilt the floor. Something warmed in my chest that wasn't the mall heating. People behind us shuffled forward, and we followed like 2 cars catching the same green lights. We reached the counter, ordered. She got a small cappuccino. I got a drip because I never learned to pronounce the fancy ones and stepped aside to wait. I asked where she was working now. She said she'd moved to a different medical center on the east side. Nights mostly quieter in the hall, she said. Louder in the heart. She said it like a joke, but her eyes held a mile of things she didn't explain. Up close, she looked a little older than the last time I saw her, but also more herself, like how a photograph sharpens when you finish focusing the lens. Our cups landed on the counter with our names spelled wrong. I heard myself say it before I could think it through. Do you have 10 minutes to sit? No pressure. I owe you a proper hello from 3 years ago. She glanced at the clock above the cafe, then at me. The pause was short but careful. 10 minutes is easy, she said. I have 30. We found a small table by the glass railing that looked out over the lower level. The clatter of the mall faded into a backdrop. A steady river of noise you forget is there. We started with safe things. The weather that couldn't make up its mind. The traffic that never did. The way the city smelled different after rain. Then we drifted toward the hospital days gently like stepping across stones. I remember you arguing with your pain scale, she said. You kept saying it's a solid 6 with aspirations of 8. Ambition is important, I said. And you wouldn't eat the Jell-O. It tasted like a scented candle. She laughed, and the laugh hit something in me I didn't know was waiting. It was nothing dramatic, no violins, no cinematic slow motion, just a very clean sense of rightness, like two lines aligning on a map. She told me she was 37 now, divorced for 2 years, no kids, not allergic to commitment, but cautious with it. I learned I'm better at caring for people than rescuing them. She said, work taught me that, life taught me the rest. I told her I was 30, not currently broken, a little over serious on weekdays, and slightly less so on Sundays, and that the last 3 years had been a lot of work and not enough life. I've been trying to fix that, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. We talked until the coffee cooled and the time on her watch ran out of extra minutes. She checked it once, then twice. I should go, she said, not apologizing, just naming a fact. Right, I said. The air around the table changed like a movie scene that knows its ending. I didn't want to leave this as a coincidence that would turn into a story I told later about timing and almost. The window was small, but it was open. I'd like to see you again, I said. Not as a patient, as a human who finally eats his Jell-O. That would be a first, she said. There was that careful short pause again, like checking a bridge before you cross it. Then she nodded. Text me, but don't make me wait too long. She put her number in my phone, tapped the screen, and handed it back like we were finishing a handoff we'd started years ago. We stood, tossed the cups, and walked back toward the river of people. At the junction where our paths split, left for the exit, right for the department store, we drifted apart with a small wave that felt larger than it looked. When I reached the escalator, I typed her a message. Edwin, the reformed Jell-O skeptic. Coffee was good, timing was better. I didn't hit send yet. I watched the words sit there ready. Downstairs, a kid dropped a balloon and let it rise. I pressed send. I didn't expect her to reply that fast, but an hour later, while I was back home doing laundry, my phone buzzed. Chris, glad the Jell-O skeptic survived. Next time you're buying the coffee. I smiled like an idiot. That one line carried more warmth than any conversation I'd had in months. I typed back that I'd be honored. She sent a thumbs up emoji. Simple, not flirty, but enough. We met again 3 days later at a small cafe halfway between her hospital and my office. I got there early, pretending to read something on my phone, but mostly I was just nervous. When she walked in, the first thing I noticed was how at ease she seemed, comfortable in her own skin, like someone who had seen enough life to not fake anything anymore. Hey, Mr. Patient, she said, setting her purse on the chair. Hey, my favorite nurse to worry about me, I answered. She laughed, and just like that, the air was easy again. We ordered lunch, turkey sandwiches, and 2 black coffees. The place was quiet enough to hear the hum of the espresso machine and the rain beginning outside. So, she said, you still breaking bones or just hearts these days? Mostly delivery schedules, I said. The job's not glamorous, but it pays the rent and doesn't try to kill me, so that's progress. She nodded. I switched hospitals. The hours are worse, but the people are better. I guess that's how it goes. Then, almost like thinking out loud, she added, after the divorce, I needed a clean start. New walls, new faces. There wasn't sadness in her voice, more like quiet acceptance. I didn't cry, just listen. We talked for nearly 2 hours. She told me about her night shifts, the exhaustion that sometimes made her laugh for no reason, and the moments that reminded her why she stayed in this job. The old man who brought her chocolate every week. The little boy who waved goodbye from a wheelchair. She spoke with the kind of sincerity that makes you stop checking your phone. When it was my turn, I told her how life after the accident had changed me, how I'd stopped rushing into things, how I'd grown quieter. It's weird, I said, but you think about who sat next to your bed and suddenly that matters more than who texted you back. She looked at me with that small, knowing smile. Most people never realize that, she said softly. We left the cafe when the rain stopped. Outside, the air smelled clean, the streets reflecting the pale afternoon light. I walked her to her car, unsure if I should hug her or just wave. She made the choice for me, a brief, warm hug that lingered for half a heartbeat longer than politeness required. Text me, she said again, but don't wait too long this time. I won't, and I didn't. Over the next few weeks, coffee became a habit. Sometimes it was lunch, sometimes a walk in the park after her shift. We talked about everything, music, movies, how neither of us could stand small talk. It wasn't romantic yet, but there was something steady building beneath the surface, like a song warming up before the melody starts. One evening, she called me out of nowhere. Her voice was soft, tired. You up for a drive? I just need to get out of the hospital air. 20 minutes later, she slid into the passenger seat of my car, still in her scrubs. We drove with no destination, just quiet streets and the hum of the radio. At one red light, she said, "You know what's funny? When you were my patient, I used to check your vitals twice as often as I needed to." I told myself it was because of the accident. It wasn't. I glanced at her. What was it then? She smiled faintly. You reminded me that not everyone leaves when things get hard. You just fought to get better. I didn't know what to say. The light turned green and the car moved forward, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something real had just been said. Something small but important. When I dropped her off, she rested her hand on my arm for a moment. Thank you for the drive, she said. I didn't realize how much I missed just breathing. Any time, I said, and I meant it. That night, lying in bed, I scrolled through our messages, reading them like pages of a story I didn't want to end. I didn't know what we were becoming, but I knew I wanted more of it. More of her calm voice, her quiet humor, the way she made the world feel a little less heavy. By the time I fell asleep, her words were still in my head. You were my favorite patient to worry about. Only now I was the one worrying about her in a good way. It's strange how routine can become something you look forward to. Every Tuesday and Friday, Chris and I would meet sometimes for breakfast if she was coming off a night shift, sometimes after work if our schedules somehow aligned. It wasn't officially dating, at least not in the way people define it, but there was something unmistakably personal about the way we found time for each other despite everything. I'd text her things like, survived another logistics meltdown, and she'd reply, good, I was about to page you to the ER again. It was easy, natural, the kind of connection that doesn't demand constant effort. One evening we met at a small park near the old hospital, the same one where she treated me years ago. The sun was setting behind the trees and the air carried that faint smell of spring rain on pavement. She was sitting on a bench with two coffees, one already waiting for me. I figured you'd show up, she said as I sat down. I try not to make my favorite nurse wait, I said, and she smiled, shaking her head. We talked about work, life, little things. She told me about her patients, never names, just stories. The elderly man who refused to let go of her hand after surgery. The mother who asked her to whisper to her newborn because her voice was too weak. The things she said weren't dramatic, just real. I realized how deeply she cared, how much she carried home every night. You must get tired of worrying about everyone, I said. She looked out at the lake, quiet for a moment sometimes. But it's who I am, I guess. When you stop caring, that's when you should stop doing this job. Something in her tone felt heavier than usual. I wanted to ask more, but she changed the subject. And what about you? Still working late, pretending you love spreadsheets? Pretending less lately, I said. Maybe because of you. She looked at me, steady, curious. Because of me? Yeah, you remind me to slow down, to actually notice things again. She didn't say anything for a while, just looked down at her coffee cup, tracing the rim with her finger. You have no idea how long it's been since someone said something like that to me. She finally said it was quiet after that, but not awkward, just peaceful. The kind of silence where everything important has already been said. Over the next few weeks, our bond deepened, though neither of us named it. We weren't rushing. We didn't talk about what this was. We just kept showing up. Sometimes we'd take walks, sometimes drive aimlessly through the city, music playing low. I'd catch her looking at me from the passenger seat, then quickly turning away, pretending to adjust her seatbelt. One night after dinner, she told me about her divorce, how it wasn't messy but still hurt. Her ex wasn't cruel, just absent, someone who slowly faded out of her life. I thought I could fix it by trying harder, she said. But you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be present. I listened quietly. There was nothing to fix, no advice to give, just space to let her speak. When she finished, she smiled weakly. Sorry, I didn't mean to unload that on you. It's fine, I said. You were there when I was broken. I can at least return the favor. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't. Then she reached over, resting her hand briefly on mine. You're different, Edwin. Not because you say nice things, because you mean them. That night as I drove home, I realized I was falling for her. Not in the sudden, reckless way you fall for someone you barely know, but in the quiet way that builds with time, layer by layer, until it feels inevitable. Still, there were moments when I felt her holding back. Sometimes she'd go silent during conversations, like she was measuring her words. Other times, she'd cancel plans last minute, saying she needed to catch up on sleep or pick up an extra shift. I didn't push. I told myself patience was the right thing, even if it left me wondering where I stood. One Sunday morning, I asked if she wanted to join me for breakfast. She replied hours later, I can't today. Rough night, maybe next week. For the rest of that day, I couldn't focus. I told myself not to read into it, but I did anyway. I'd gotten used to her presence, the texts, the laughter, the calm. When it went quiet, everything felt off balance. 2 days later, she called. Her voice was soft, apologetic. Hey, I'm sorry I disappeared. Sometimes I get scared when that things start to feel real again. I didn't expect that. Scared of what? I asked. Of losing something good. I've been through enough to know it hurts more when you finally start to care again. I didn't hesitate. Then let's not rush it. I said, let's just be real. No promises, no pressure. She was silent for a few seconds. Then she said, you have no idea how much I needed to hear that. After that, things shifted. We didn't label it, but something between us solidified. We saw each other more often, more comfortably. She'd fall asleep on my couch after her shifts, and I'd quietly cover her with a blanket, careful not to wake her. Some nights we'd talk until morning about everything. Childhood memories, regrets, dreams neither of us had said aloud in years. There were no grand gestures, no movie moments, just small, steady ones. But those are the ones that last. Looking back now, that was when I knew what we had was real. Not because it was perfect, but because it wasn't. Because it took patience, understanding, and two people who'd both lived enough life to know how rare it was to find something honest. It happened on a Friday evening, one of those slow spring nights when the air feels heavy, but calm. Chris and I had plans to meet for dinner after her shift. I'd reserved a small table at a restaurant near her hospital. Nothing fancy, just our usual place where the staff already knew her by name. She was running late, which wasn't unusual. Her work could stretch hours past schedule, and I'd learned not to take it personally. But when she finally arrived, something was different. She looked tense, distracted. Her phone kept buzzing on the table, lighting up with messages she didn't open. I tried to joke it off. Looks like you're still on call, even off duty, but she didn't laugh. Halfway through dinner, curiosity got the better of me. The screen lit up again, and I caught a glimpse of a name. Tom. Her expression changed when she noticed I'd seen it. Is that your ex? I asked, trying to sound casual, though my voice betrayed me. She sighed and set the phone face down. Yeah, he's been texting lately. Nothing serious. Just checking in about some things we never fully closed. I nodded, pretending I understood, but inside something twisted. And you're answering him sometimes, she said softly. I don't want to, but ignoring him feels unfinished. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't angry, just uncertain. We'd grown close, but we hadn't defined anything. Still, seeing that name on her screen stirred a jealousy I didn't expect. Dinner ended awkwardly. She drove home first, and I sat in my car for a while before starting the engine. The city lights blurred through the windshield as I realized how much she'd come to mean to me. Maybe too much. The next few days were quiet. No texts, no calls. It felt strange waking up without her name on my screen. Every time I reached for my phone, I stopped myself. I didn't want to chase something that maybe wasn't mine to chase. By the fourth day, I gave in. I texted her, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I miss talking to you. She didn't reply that night. The next morning, there was finally a message. I'm sorry, Edwin. I just needed space to think. I didn't mean to disappear. I called her. She answered after the second ring. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. I just got scared. I didn't expect to care this much again. It feels like standing at the edge of something I can't control. Well, then don't run from it, I said quietly. You don't owe me explanations. I just don't want to lose you over something stupid. There was silence on the line. Then she whispered, Can we talk in person? That evening, I drove to her apartment. She lived on the second floor of a quiet complex with a courtyard full of plants she never had time to water. When she opened the door, her eyes looked tired, red around the edges. I didn't mean to make this complicated, she said as I stepped inside. I just felt old feelings creeping back. Fear, doubt, all of it. I guess I panicked. I took a breath. Chris, I'm not asking for a label or promises. I just want honesty. That's all. She looked at me for a long moment, then slowly walked closer. Honesty, she said. Then here it is. I like you more than I've liked anyone in a long time, and that terrifies me. Before I could respond, she reached out and rested her forehead against my chest. I don't want to lose this, she whispered. But I don't want to mess it up either. I wrapped my arms around her gently. Then let's not mess it up, I said. Let's just keep showing up. That's all that matters. We stood like that for a while. No grand gestures, no big words, just two people who had almost lost each other over silence. After that night, things changed. Not overnight, but gradually. The distance between us disappeared. We didn't need to fill every conversation with promises. We just lived it one day at a time. We started spending weekends together. Sometimes she'd cook breakfast after her shift wearing one of my old shirts, laughing at how bad I was at flipping pancakes. Sometimes I'd pick her up from work at midnight and we'd drive through the city with no destination, just the hum of streetlights and tired music on the radio. Every now and then that fear would still flicker in her eyes, the kind that comes from being hurt before. But she was trying, and I saw that I was too. One night we were sitting on her balcony, both quiet after a long day. She looked at me and said, "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just another patient I'd forget after discharge. And now," I asked, "now you're the person who reminds me why I shouldn't stop believing in people." I didn't reply. I just reached over and held her hand. The city below us buzzed with distant noise. Cars, laughter, a dog barking somewhere. Life kept moving, but for the first time in years, both of us had stopped running. We weren't perfect, but we were real. And sometimes that's enough. It's been 3 years since that night on her balcony. 3 years since we decided to stop overthinking what we had and just live it. And somehow through the quiet mornings, the hard weeks, and the unpredictable turns life always throws, we stayed together. Not because it was easy, but because we never stopped choosing each other. We live in a modest two-bedroom house on the edge of Pasadena. Nothing fancy, just comfortable. She turned one of the rooms into a small office where she sometimes charts patient notes late at night. I turned the garage into a half-finished workshop that's always dusty, but makes me happy. It's our space, imperfect, but ours. When people ask how we met, we always exchange the same look, half amusement, half disbelief. He was my patient, she says with a grin. She saved my life twice. I answer once in a hospital bed and once after it. Chris still works as a nurse. She says it keeps her grounded. I think it also reminds her that life is fragile, that moments matter. Some nights she comes home exhausted, drops her bag, and sinks into the couch. I'll make tea, sit beside her, and listen to her stories. She never tells me the sad parts in detail, just enough to let me see how deeply she feels for people. And every time she talks, I'm reminded why I fell in love with her. I've learned that love, the kind that lasts, isn't made of grand gestures. It's made of small, consistent things. The way she reaches for my hand when she's half asleep. The way she leaves me notes when she works the night shift. The way we argue about grocery lists and still kiss before leaving the house. Last month, we went back to the same mall where we first saw each other again. She wanted to get new scrubs, and I wanted to see if that cafe was still there. It was different baristas, same smell of roasted coffee and caramel. We sat at the same table we had that first day, and it hit me how much had changed since then. 3 years, she said, stirring her drink. Feels like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. You still think I was your favorite patient to worry about? I asked. She looked at me for a moment, pretending to think. No, she said finally. Now you're my favorite person to come home to. We laughed, but there was something tender in her eyes when she said it. I think both of us felt the same quiet gratitude that somehow two people who had every reason to give up on love managed to find it again in the most unexpected way. Sometimes I think about the version of myself before that day in the mall. The guy just running errands, replacing headphones, going through life on autopilot. If I'd walked out of that line 10 seconds earlier, maybe I never would have turned my head, never would have heard her voice again. It's strange how close we come to missing the best things that ever happened to us. We've talked about the future, not in the rushed way people do when they're scared of losing time, but calmly. We might move somewhere quieter, maybe closer to the coast. She wants to start a small clinic someday, something community-based. I told her I'd help with the logistics. That's what I'm good at after all. She laughed, saying, "You've been managing my chaos for years. You'll do fine." People sometimes ask if the age difference ever mattered. It didn't. What mattered was timing. We met at a point when both of us were tired of pretending, ready to be real. And that's why it worked, because everything between us grew out of honesty, patience, and the kind of care that doesn't fade. On quiet nights, we still sit out on that same balcony, now ours, and talk about everything and nothing. The city hums below, and sometimes she leans her head on my shoulder and just breathes. Those moments, the simple ones, are what I hold on to the most. The other night, she asked me if I ever wondered how different things would have been if we hadn't met again. I said I didn't like to imagine it. You brought color back into my life. I told her, before you, everything was fine but flat. Now it feels like living, not surviving. She didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, "You did the same for me." We sat there in silence after that, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, and I realized how complete everything felt. Not perfect, not flawless, just complete. I know people like stories with dramatic endings, proposals, weddings, fireworks, but ours doesn't need that. Our story ends exactly where it should. Two people who met by chance, who healed each other's broken parts, still sitting side by side years later, still talking, still choosing each other. If someone asked me what love feels like now, I'd say this. It's when you look across the table after years and still see the same person who once made your heart skip in a hospital corridor. It's knowing that no matter how ordinary life gets, you've already lived something extraordinary just by finding them. And that's how our story ends. Not with goodbye, but with staying. Life's most profound connections often bloom from the seeds of unexpected reunions, teaching us that fate has a way of circling back when we're ready to embrace it. In Edwin's story, a chance encounter in a bustling mall rekindled a bond forged in vulnerability. A hospital room where Chris, his steadfast nurse, saw beyond his broken body to the resilient spirit within. Years had passed, scars had healed, yet that simple recognition, "You were my favorite patient to worry about," unlocked doors to a love built on patience, honesty, and quiet strength. It reminds us that heartbreak and hardship aren't endpoints but detours, guiding us toward those who truly see us. Edwin and Chris didn't rush. They navigated fears, doubts, and silences with grace, proving that real love isn't a fireworks display, but a steady flame kindled through small acts, late-night drives, shared coffees, and the courage to show up despite the risks. Their journey evokes a deep emotion, the ache of what could have been missed, the warmth of what was found. We learn that timing isn't about perfection, but readiness, that letting go of autopilot lives opens space for extraordinary, ordinary moments. In a world rushing forward, their tale urges us to pause, to cherish the people who once crossed our paths, because sometimes the universe whispers, "Not yet," only to later shout, "Now." It's a reminder that healing comes not just from time, but from connection, turning survivors into lovers who choose each other daily. What's your story of a serendipitous reunion that changed everything? Share in the comments below. Your experiences inspire us all. And if this touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to True Lean and hit the bell for more real stories with twists that remind us life's greatest lessons are often wrapped in second chances.